9:30 Eastern time here, a live look from Midtown Manhattan overlooking the East River there on this Friday morning. So Dow futures are up just about a couple hundred points. The opening bell ringing right now, but it was down 194 yesterday. We'll continue to watch the markets as they unfold today, move throughout this Friday morning. Meantime, President Trump is doubling down on his plan to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico next week, but also promising to double his 10% tariff on on Chinese imports. Trump saying the tariffs are meant to force the countries to take action as illicit drugs such as fentanyl pour into the United States.
David Herbert is an economist at the American Institute for Economic Research, and Brandon Arnold is an executive vice president at the National Taxpayers Union. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Donald Trump's decision, it is impacting the markets. We're seeing it. I've watched my stocks go down a little bit, unfortunately. The Nasdaq is falling by over 530 points, the Dow falling by nearly 200, the S&P also slipping just by under 100 points. Now, we've seen a lot of fluctuations because of these tariffs. David, do you think that the markets will start to correct themselves anytime soon, or is this something that we're going to have to stick it out for?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's fair to say that President Trump has done a lot of good things, both politically and economically. But when it comes to this tariff policy and the constantly changing and going back and forth, markets are going to respond, and they're not going to respond positively. Businesses are trying to make long-term deals with international trade partners. And when international trade policy changes month to month, week to week, even day to day, that uncertainty is going to make things a lot more difficult. And so what I'm looking for President Trump to do is to get away from these tariff policies and take a page out of his own book, The Art of the Deal, and find handshake agreements with people, not fists with other countries.
All right, that's the opinion there of David Hebert. We appreciate that. Brandon, I'll go to you now with this story. Remote federal workers are now receiving an ultimatum. This has been a major headline as well coming from this administration. The U.S. government's Human Resources Agency telling at least 24 employees they have just 9 days to decide whether to relocate back to D.C. Again, get back to work in an office. Brandon, your thoughts on how this entire thing is playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the federal government ought to act like the private sector best it can. And we're seeing more and more private sector businesses call employees back into the office. The pandemic is over. The pandemic has been over for years now. It's time to return to our at-work policies, because I think that is what really gets people engaged in their place of business, produces more output, and so forth. And that's what managers see. That's what managers are requesting in the private sector, and the federal government ought to follow suit.
All right, Meta is hopping on that AI train. They're going to make their artificial intelligence, Meta AI, into its own standalone app. Now, CEO Mark Zuckerberg, he's had plans for many years to turn his company into a leader in artificial intelligence. And he's hoping that by releasing this app, it could possibly compete with some of the current leaders in the market like OpenAI and Alphabet. David, do you see that happening?
I do. And what I think this really underscores is the importance of competition in this all-important new industry called AI. So we see different platforms like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Google, even X has gotten in on this by releasing their own Grok app, which I'll be honest, I've been using it almost every single day, and it's kind of wonderful. So I really love seeing this competition in this industry and the different data sets that these different companies are able to train their AI models on. I think this is just a win for the consumer and for America as a whole.
All right. And Brandon, just watching the markets now, the Nasdaq down about 156 points. So it's been in the red since opening bell about 4 minutes ago. Just continuing on that conversation of AI. But not only that, but tech as well. And you think about tariffs or Chinese tariffs, the potential for tariffs on Chinese products. We get a lot of our tech products from overseas.
We do, and so we need to be very mindful of that even if we relocate businesses to the United States, and Apple obviously just made an announcement that they're going to invest very heavily in the United States. That's great news, but they're still going to be importing parts and other items to their manufacturing facilities. So they're still going to be dependent on international commerce. We always are. So we need to hammer out good trade deals with China, with Canada, with Mexico, with our international trading partners to make sure that we're getting low-cost raw materials and intermediate goods that we can turn into finished products here, and then have access to those markets so our huge companies can sell into foreign markets the best we can and make a lot of money, make a lot of jobs for American workers here.
Yeah, and just to point out, too, for this administration, it seemingly was an 11th hour move that these tariffs never were implemented because there was some deal made specifically with Canada and Mexico, with the border security stepped up, and then he put those tariffs on pause. So again, going back to David's point, perhaps this is the art of the deal as we watch this play out. They're not implemented yet, but they're floated. David Hebert, Brandon Arnold, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Well, since taking back